So hadith number 32, inshallah, today's lesson will be hopefully a shorter lesson. Where an Abi Sa'id Sa'd ibn Malik bin Sinan al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qala la darar wa la dirar. Hadith Hasan rawahu Ibn Majah wa ghayrihi. Musnad. Yeah, okay. So this hadith that we're taking today, it's actually a principle in law where we take certain axioms from. From amongst them is this one here, which says the Prophet ﷺ said, on the authority of Sayyidina Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, that there is no harm nor reciprocating harm. Okay. First thing they say, just as an aside, is that they say we should say radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma as opposed to anhu in the hadith in the Arabic. May Allah be pleased with them, not him. Why? Because the father of Sayyidina Abu Sa'id was likewise a great companion. So when we have a father and son, they should say radiyallahu anhuma as opposed to anhu. On top of this, there's conversation around this particular hadith, whether it is mursal. Last week we said conversations where the hadith is mawquf. Does anyone remember what that was? When we didn't spend too much time up. There's categorizations of hadith. Okay? And when we say a hadith is marfu'a, it means that it goes back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we have a hadith that's mawquf. So it's when a companion will say something without mentioning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Certain mawquf hadiths, statements from the companions, they say they have the ruling of the Prophet saying them. Why or when? They say if there's no room for the intellect. So if a companion says that in heaven is such and such, without saying that the Prophet said, we take that as a hadith. Why? Because there's no room for the intellect to conjure up what's in heaven. That they would have taken that from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mursal is when
Shaykh, that was mawquf?
That was mawquf. Waqf. Yeah. Mursal is when a tabi'i mentions the hadith without mentioning the companion. Okay, so you have the Prophet, you have the companions, and you have the succeeding, the tabi'in. So if a tabi'i mentions a hadith now without mentioning the companion, we call that mursal. No. It's not necessarily a problem in relation to the acceptance of it based on the rest of the chain. And with certain schools, it's maqbool, it's accepted as long as they look at the biography of the tabi'i, that was it likely that he took from a particular companion, then it's maqbool, particularly with the Malikis, it's accepted.
So this is where the tabi'i says that the Prophet ﷺ said it, or
exactly, yeah.
Okay,
so he skips mentioning the companion. Yeah. In the mursal, there's irsal in the hadith, that the hadith is mursal. Okay. And here this hadith is narrated by Abu Sa'id Sa'd ibn Malik bin Sinan al-Khudri, who was one of the younger companions. We said his father was a great companion, so he accepted Islam when he was very young. He was from amongst those. Do you remember when the youth came to the Prophet to participate in Uhud, and they were rejected? Yeah? Even though they wanted to go and participate in the campaign alongside the Prophet ﷺ, but he had to reject certain because they were pre-pubescent, they were young. So he was young when he accepted Islam, but from the Battle of the Khandaq onwards, he participated in many of the campaigns. Okay, so this particular hadith, like I said, it's a principle in law. So when the Prophet says la darar wa la dirar, that there's no harm or reciprocal harm, there's many different understandings as to what this particular hadith means. The one we're taking here, as you notice, this name keeps coming up, Imam ad-Dimyati Jawahir, which is a comment on the Arba'in of Imam Nawawī. So we tend to take, for this course, we've been taking the majority of our comment from this particular book. That when it says la darar, that one should not harm anyone. There should be no darar. Dirar is that one should not what? Reciprocate for being harmed, but rather they should pardon. Okay, so darar, you should not harm someone. Dirar, if you're harmed, you should not reciprocate with harm, rather you should forgive. Unless what? Or you should not harm with something greater than what they were subject to. Okay? Al-aynu bil-ayn, wal-anf bil-anf. Okay, that there's premises for this in law. There's premises for this in law. So, 2 verses of the Quran, and we were always, inclined towards the first one. And ta'fu khayrun lakum. And ta'fu wa tasfahu wa taghfir. That even though someone may have the option to reciprocate, it's always better to what? Pardon, forgive, overlook. Yeah? So in relation to these 2 premises, it's another very high ethical stance, isn't it? Don't harm those who harm you. Right? Don't harm those who harm you. Very, very briefly, someone give me the prophetic definition of good manners from the hadith of Uqba ibn Amīr. And tasilu man kata'aka, to maintain ties with those who sever ties from you. So he said, Uqba, should I not tell you what is the greatest form of high ethical conduct, akhlaq, lidunya wal akhirah, in this life, and likewise those who are raised in ranks in the afterlife. And tasilu man kata'aka, to maintain ties, that's actually the second thing, sorry, to maintain ties with those who sever ties from you. And tu'ti man haramaka, to give to the one who withholds from you. And at least give me the last one, because that's in reference to here. And ta'fu amman dhalamaka, and to have afu, to have pardoned someone who has oppressed you. Right? Do you see how the high conduct that our religion calls you to? It's not easy. Right? It's not easy to particularly that last one. And ta'fu amman dhalamaka, to pardon those who have what? When the Prophet enters Mecca, Yawm al-Fath, those people who, physically attacked him, those who knocked his blessed daughter off of her mount so she miscarried, those who were strangled and the like. What does the Prophet say to those people? La tathriba alaykum al-yawm antum tulaqa. There's no blemish on you today, you're all free to go. Right? It's very raqi. Right? It's easy to remember. We all remember those who have done us wrong. But this is a premise. Ethically, likewise, they're going to give us examples in terms of, again, the pragmatics of law, where this is a legal premise as well. But la darar, i.e. don't harm others, wala dirar, and don't respond in harm to those who have harmed you. Here with the caveat of what? You're permitted within the tradition to what? Like for like. So the two verses of the Quran are what? فَاحْذُرُوهُمْ وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَتَسْفَهُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Okay? And if you forgive, overlook and pardon, then know that there's an immense response from God for you in this regard. You're able to do this, you're able to overlook, you're able to pardon, you're able to forgive. Yeah? Allah will just raise you, right? Through His forgiveness, through His love towards you.
So, Shaykh,
let me just finish this, and then the other verse is what? فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. When one commits aggression against you, be aggressive against them in kind and fear Allah. Okay? First and foremost, these types of verses are referencing what? The context of war. Yeah. Right? The context of war. Not that if you're walking down the road and someone does something, you can just, respond immediately in kind. No. But there is a premise. Al-aynu bil-ayn, bil-anf bil-anf. An eye for an eye, nose for nose, ear for ear, ila akhirih. If you look at, again, the books of the biographies of the great men and women of our tradition, they would put themselves in situations to test them in this regards. Right? And things ordinarily are incremental. There's certain people that are just, because what is khuluq? I.e., what is someone's character? They say siftun saji'a, rasikhun fin nafs. Right? That people are born with particular innate traits. Certain people are stingy. Certain people are generous. Certain people are brave. Certain people are cowards. Yeah? So you have positive and negative traits in you. The negative traits you're going to try and blot out, and you're trying to enhance your positive traits. So here, for example, it's if you're radically, you look at like the books of the Salihin, they've put themselves in situations where they want to test their nafs. I'm not saying to do it radically, but the point being there has to be what? A practice that one's reflecting upon to make sure they're what? You can't be the same person you were last year. Many men are childlike. They're still children. You know, they're still operating in that type of like feeding the shahwa of the nafs. There's been no honing of one's character. But know that everyone's going to be tested. And we've said this before, your tests aren't necessarily, we're speaking about what? Historically about trying to enhance your devotional practice. Your test, you know when you try to make your prayer better, your prayer is not an enemy to you, is it? It's not annoying you, is it? What annoys you is other human beings. What are you tested through? Family, friends, work, colleagues. It's through other human beings that Allah's going to test you in relation to what? Your akhlaq. No one has good manners if they're by themselves all the time. That's not an expression of good manners. The expression of good manners is when you have to mix with people and deal with the whole spectrum of humanity. Now when you're tested, that's when someone's akhlaq comes to the fore, doesn't it? So when Allah puts those tests in front of you, then you have to, you know, grab and reflect them. We can't operate like children, where it's just nafs. Because I'm saying it, that hadith is difficult. Because give to someone who withholds from you. What's the context of that? I need from you, I need from you, I need from you, you don't give. Tables are turned. Now she comes to me with a need. That's the person you should what? Prioritize. The one that withheld from you. And man kata'aka. Person, when you see them, they turn away from you, they avoid you. They want to be distant from you. That's the one you're supposed to make effort with. What does Anas tell us? I'm not giving him. I'm not going to, forget them. I'm going to go around them. That's just, again, operating like a child, isn't it? The third one is immensely difficult, though. And ta'fu amman dhalamaka. To not have anything in your heart against those who have oppressed you, that's something, again, all these
things.
things.
Feed back into the first. Because if you pardon, you can maintain ties, you can...
I would say there's
a different level, right?
There's definitely I'd say there's a connection because they're in the hadith. But I'm just saying that to pardon those that have oppressed you, it takes a very courageous human being to do that. We all have. Everyone's been wronged. Everyone's been wronged in their life over someone. But what you will find is that to let that go is an immense expansiveness of your soul. You'll feel better yourself. To hold on to these knots, there's a harm to you as well in doing that. And again, that's what we see. That's courage. To pardon those that have wronged you, that takes immense courage. And we've said this before when we did the seerah. They say that the mutilation of what? The people on Archer's Mount in Battle of Uhud. They said, Kana aswa'u tamthil. It was the worst form of mutilation we'd ever seen. From those who mutilated, they end up saying La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah. Now you're praying next to a man that mutilated your family. Side by side. The companions were mountains of men. Yeah. That you can let that go and now stand shoulder to shoulder next to someone that mutilated your kith and kin. They truly are just like the Prophet said, Nujum, stars in the sky. They're so lofty. But the reason we have those things are because they are examples for us. This isn't fairy tale. It's not beyond you. But it definitely takes, like this, for us, there's definitely an incremental nature to it. Save that people do have a particular, they're born with innate traits. That's what we understand akhlaq to be. Yeah? That you, like I said, you'll see two children from the same parents, one might be shy, meek, other be courageous. There's something natural. Nature exists within people, so it's enhancing good aspects, and good is always what conforms to faith, and then to trying to what? Suppress or remove bad traits. In a broader context, you are permitted to not see certain people, especially if there's what? A religiously harmful impact to your life. You're not supposed to bring fitna and discord into your sphere. But if it's just I don't like, Faisal's annoying, so I don't want to see him just because he's. If it's only that, then I'll see him every now and then to make sure that I'm maintaining what? A relationship. But if it's someone is immoral, someone who if you're around them, then you're it's not good to bring those people into your home. Well, then you're within your rights, obviously, to have what's called hajar, to have like a distance from that type of person. So it depends on what the reason is for maintaining or not maintaining a specific relationship. Bismillah. Tamam. So the hadith denotes from the outset that all forms of harm must be avoided, as the form is indefinite. Darar and dirar in language. It's not ad-darar or ad-dirar, alif lam. So when we have nakira, an indefinite word, ordinarily it's more general, it's more encompassing. Yeah? For example, if I say salat, prayer, or as-salat is specific, isn't it? The prayer is specific to something. Salat is what? More general. So the hadith is la darar wa la dirar. No darar, no dirar. Not ad-darar wa la dirar with alif and lam. Therefore, it's all forms of what harm should be avoided. Okay? La ilaha illallah. For both dar and dirar, this being unjust, dhulm, as Allah states, that the losers will be those who bear the burden of His injustice. Okay, that we shouldn't be people of dhulm. We shouldn't be people of what? Injustice. And he brings a very worrying hadith, Imam Dimyati, in relation to the danger of harming people. Okay, and he gives us a picture of what? A picture of hellfire in the following hadith, and on the conclusion of the description of hellfire, he says, this was for who? What's this descriptive for? For those people who would harm other believers. Okay, in this long hadith, Inna li jahannam la jababa fi kulli jabbin sahil ka sahil al-bahr. That hell has pits, and each pit is a shore like the shore of a sea. Fihi hawam, like in it parasites or hayat. And he goes to describe what those parasites and hayat, those snakes, look like, and scorpions. When the people of hell ask for relief, they're told to what? Move out towards the shore. So they move out towards the shore, their parasites seize them by their lips and their sides, and whatever else Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts to scrape them. Okay, they return to what? They rush to the heart of where they had fled from the fire. And when they get there, because of what they were subject to from those parasites, they start to what? They're subject to a skin disease and start to scratch at it, to the extent that they scratch so vigorously that their bones appear. And it was said, oh so-and-so, does this harm you? They say yes. This is because what? The harm you meted out to other people. No? People were so careful. People were so careful about not what harming. They speak about salihin, people from the men and women of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that had problems. They had like rats in their homes. And so someone gave them a gift of a cat to deal with the rats. And they refused the gift for fear that the rats would move from their house and harm what? Their neighbors. So concerned about harming other people. You know? This is something I think we don't pay much attention to or mind to. So the point being here, what? To the best of our ability, any types of forms of harm should be avoided. La darar wa la dirar. Okay? Then it goes on to speak about what? In relation to law. But how does this premise appear in law? To the extent that when they speak about what? Even in terms of like property, building. You know if you build an extension to your house. Asians ever done that? Do they ever build extensions to their house? Sometimes. No? That if there's harm to your neighbor, the books of law actually speak about that. It's a form of darar, harm that you're meting out to your neighbor in relation to, does it affect their view? Actually mentioned in the books of law, which I thought was interesting. Not extensions, but they speak about property. Yeah? Oh, sorry?
It's in English law as well.
Yeah, and so a more... So 2 examples from Islamic law where this principle is applied. I'll come back to you inshallah, yeah. So two premises. One is known as what's an wasiyah. Wasiya is a bequest. What's a bequest in Islamic law? That you can give up to a third of your wealth in a bequest to anyone you please. Okay, Muslim, non-Muslim, cat sanctuary, whatever you want to do. But you see here it says what? From Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, al-idraru fil wasiyya min al-kaba'ir. Right? To harm someone through a bequest is a major sin. Okay, Ibn Kathir says what in interpretation of this? He goes, if the bequest is not based upon justice, so for example, I want to give because I don't want a particular heir to receive wealth. Now, inheritance law is what? It's stipulated by the Quran, isn't it? What people should inherit. So if I'm going to now try and do that to stop some heir getting a particular form of my wealth, that's a type of harm according to Ibn Kathir. Or to increase the wealth of someone. So we know the distribution when someone passes away based on who's left from the heirs. But I want someone to have more wealth. That's a problem as well. Okay? So therefore, if someone were to use a bequest to harm someone, falls under this premise, la darar wala dirar. Okay? And Abdullah ibn Abbas is saying it's from what? It's from the major sins. Okay? One which is more, I would say, common, not that that's uncommon, is the second one. Divorce. وإذا طلقتم النساء فبلغن أجلهن فامسكوهن بالمعروف أو سرحوهن بمعروف ولا تمسكوهن ضرارا. Right? That when someone, if they want to either keep your spouse in kindness or separate with kindness, ولا تمسكوهن ضرارا. Don't hold on to a woman only to what? Harm her. لتعتدوا ومن يفعل ذلك فقد ظلم نفسه. Right? In essence, God is telling you what? That if you do this, you're harming who? Yeah, you just harmed yourself here. Okay? You just harmed yourself. You know, there's instances where people would divorce, and then before the conclusion, like a one pronouncement of divorce, and then before the conclusion of the waiting period, they take them back. Keep them, abuse them, divorce them again. Take them back. Just for what? Tala'ub, just to play. Allah is saying what? You're harming yourself only in doing so. Retain your spouse kindly or release them kindly. La darar wa la dirar. Right? That you should not be people who no matter any type of harm to others, inshallah. Tamam.